Do you want to pay £50 to £100 for a professional CV writer? Well, unless you're going for a £100,000 or near job, you really don't need to. So in this video, I'm going to explain what you need a good CV to look like, say, and what you need to bear in mind for 95% of the jobs that exist out there. One quick apology, if you did not see a video come out last week on Tuesday at 5 PM in our normal slot, there was a reason for that. It was down to a quick impromptu holiday on my part. Don't worry, didn't go anywhere outside the country, stayed in the UK, but it did mean that our video wasn't released last week. But from here on inwards, unless there's any other impromptu holidays which aren't planned, then you'll just see one every Tuesday at 5 PM. So if you haven't seen the channel before, we do videos aimed to help employees, and that's either employees in employment or those seeking employment. We try our channel to be very open, engaging, but also to give you the real scope of what's actually going on rather than what it says on paper. So you get a real feel for the reality out there, I guess that's right. So if you do like this kind of stuff, do consider subscribing to the channel and give us a thumbs up at the end of the video if you like this one. We're also looking for more content to put out. The subject in today's video is actually a suggestion from not one, but a few people. So if there's anything you want to see, or any subjects you want us to cover, or see your thoughts on, anything like that, do let us know, put it in the comments below and we'll try our best, if it's suitable content obviously, to put it in our media moving forward. So with that, let's get to this video. Firstly, there are a few things that you need to bear in mind with your CV. Paying money for someone to write a CV for you 95% of the time is just completely pointless. It is not necessary for most jobs. If you are going for a 100k job, someone that's a professional grade job, maybe 70, 80k, where you've got elite level competition, corporate level environments, you're going for a specialist job with high level candidates that are going to be your competition, yes, I understand why. By far the majority of jobs you're going for, it's just not necessary. Plus, bear in mind, a CV is not going to magically get you a job. A CV in its core purpose is to get you an interview. That's it. One other thing I want you to consider is that recruiters and hiring managers are busy people. I put a video out recently on why recruiters don't always come back to your CV. I'll put the link up there. But basically the essence of it is we'll have an awful lot of CVs, a mass volume of them coming in. And just for practicality, we don't have time to come back to you. A hiring manager is in a very similar position. Typically, if they're hiring, that means they don't have enough people to do the jobs that they need done. Therefore, they're already doing more work than they need to, and that's why they need to hire. They don't have time to read a 5-page CV with your life story in it. And you've got to bear that in mind when you come to write your CV. So in the first instance, your CV will be read for, I'm not kidding you, no more than 10 seconds. The core purpose of a CV and its first principle of what it needs to do is in the first 10 seconds, grab the attention for what hiring manager or recruiter is looking for. If it doesn't say that in the first 10 seconds, you're missing the trick. With your CV layout and presentation, keep it simple. The most stupid advice I see out there is to make your CV look and stand out from the crowd, make it glitzy, have it a great format, really make it eye-catching. This sounds great and it does go against conventional theory to keep it simple, but there are reasons that I don't think are communicated very well to job seekers, and that's what I want to say and explain to you why making your CV glitzy and having a crazy format is actually a really bad idea. When you apply for almost any job these days, your CV will be processed digitally. Unlike 10, 15 years ago and beforehand, where traditionally a CV would be written out, handed to someone in person, they would put it in a tray and then they would read it later on. Times have changed. Now these days, when your CV gets to a hiring manager or a recruiter, what will happen is it will be uploaded into what is called an ATS. ATS stands for Applicant Tracking System, and it is a computer system that is basically a library of all of the CVs relevant to the company. Now, companies themselves can have an ATS system within their own computer systems, and all recruitment agencies will also have an ATS system. It is literally a digital library of CVs. Something to bear in mind with an ATS is that they don't like crazy CV formats. You see, when your CV gets fed into an ATS system, it will get converted into a different file format. And what happens then is that translation into a different file format doesn't always mean that it's going to look the same as what was fed into the system. So if you think of it as translating a sentence or a paragraph in English to a sentence or a paragraph in Japanese. If you try to do it word for word, the direct translation probably wouldn't come out the same way as what was fed into it. It will look slightly differently. The wording will be in a different order. Maybe the translation of different words would mean something else or slightly different. That's what would happen if you fed an ATS system a really complicated CV. If you send a CV to an ATS system in a traditional CV format that's uncomplicated, the CV format's normal and it's a conventional one that you would see on Microsoft Word, something like that, the chances are it will get translated nicely and exactly what you fed into it will come out the other end. But the more complicated you make your CV layout, the more complicated you put things in there, the more you want it to be glitzy, glammy and have real unconventional type stuff, the more difficult it is for the ATS to be able to translate it into a different format. I've seen CVs that have been fantastic when they've gone through the system. When they come out the other end, they don't make any sense. They look absolutely crazy and it's completely ruined what it was about. And even though we can try and fix them, the format in itself has been so complicated, it's really difficult to fix and it doesn't look anywhere near as good. And by the time it gets to a hiring manager, it just looks like a load of rubbish and it'll be more detrimental to your application than anything else. So for reasons like that, keep your CV nice and simple. So let's now move on to the CV layout itself. And here is a CV layout which is pretty standard, pretty uncomplicated and pretty basic. It's not particularly inspiring, but it's actually the CV layout I would probably go by if I was to apply for a job myself. The CV itself doesn't look visually hugely appealing, but you've got to bear in mind in the first 10 seconds when they're reading a CV, what they're looking for, whether it be a hiring manager or a recruiter, is a direct content that's going to grab them in the first 10 seconds. They'll have certain criteria they're looking for a job. They're the things that they want to see. At the top, you'll notice name, location, and your contact details. They're all clearly laid out, they're all straightforward, there's no complexities with them. But don't be that fool that forgets to put your telephone number. How on earth are we meant to call you? And don't deliberately choose to not include your telephone number because you don't like taking telephone calls. And I do genuinely get this. People go, I feel uncomfortable taking telephone calls. How do I put this? I don't get why people get scared of taking telephone calls. It's a call. We're not gonna bite you, right? Just put your big girl or big boy pants on, take the call. It's not a gunfight, is it? Do you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. Next, you've got the personal statement section. I don't think most people actually understand, judging from reading many CVs, of what the purpose of the personal statement is actually meant to be about. The purpose of a personal statement section itself is basically meant to communicate in a concise 3 sentences or a concise paragraph what you're about, what you have to offer, and why they should look to hire you. Whatever job you're going for, think of what the hiring manager is likely to want to see. For example, pointing out that you're a good team player who's equally capable of working individually as in a team is just a waste of time. Don't bother putting that generic nonsense in there as it would not cut the mustard. To keep it simple, just keep the content that exists in the personal statement relevant to the job that they want done. Think experience, skills, background, that's it. Keep it simple, don't bother using extravagant words or intellectual sentences to show off how clever you are. You've got a 10-second window in order to grab their attention. So keep it no longer than 3 to 4 sentences. The next thing on your CV is to either put your employment history or your education history. If the job that you're going for is relevant to your education, let's say you did a degree in the subject, but isn't relevant to the jobs that you've done since leaving your degree, then I'd put your education history first. But if the jobs that you've been doing for the last few years are directly relevant to the job that you're going for, then I'd put your employment history before your education history. So what one is a stronger selling point in that first 10-second window that you want the hiring manager or recruiter to see initially. Now, under employment history, you want to lay it out in this format. You want to have the job title that you did, the name of the company you worked for, and the dates to and from, typically years, that you worked there. Underneath that, you then want an outline roughly of what the job involved and 2 or 3 bullet points to explain the key skills that you utilised in that role. One quick thing to point out when you go through job titles is that if you did have an uncommon job title, let's say the company you worked for wanted to give an unusual type job title, which in any other walk of life, any other company would be given a more generic job title, change the job title to what the generic understanding of it would be. You don't want a hiring manager or recruiter to be looking at your CV, misunderstanding what the job it is that you did and putting your CV aside to think it was irrelevant. If you've got any gaps in your CV, make sure you fill them in. Don't try and overcomplicate it going, I was discovering the world, or I was trying to find myself during this 6-month stint out. Explain what you were doing during that period and why you were out. If it sounds like you're trying to hide what you were doing during that period, then it can be suspicious. You just lay it on a plate. If you got made redundant, you couldn't find anything, you decided you had some savings to go traveling or do up your house, just put it in there. Most people can look at it common sense and go, okay, I understand why they're off for that period. People have employment gaps. It happens. Don't shy away from it. Don't think it's going to put them off you having getting a job or anything like that. Just be honest and just put it in there. The clearer, the more sensible, more rational it sounds, the more likely they are to accept it, overlook it and give you a chance at an interview. A really common mistake that I see on probably about a third of all CVs is the order of which they choose to put their jobs. Put the most recent jobs that you've done first and move backwards. What you did in 1999 is absolutely irrelevant in the year 2020. Remember, you've got a 10-second window to grab the attention of a hiring manager or recruiter. One thing that I would want to put in at this point in the video is you will hear a lot of people saying you want to keep your CV within 2 pages. And some people will say, well, how on earth do I keep a CV down to 2 pages if I've been working for 30 years? I might have had 10, 15 jobs or whatever. Well, if you have, what's actually relevant to any hiring manager is probably what you've done in the last 5 years. They're not interested in what you did 15 years ago. So although in this CV example, you'll see early in the CV, I've put a little bit more detail about the job that you've done, the bullet points of it. From jobs that you might have done 10, 15 years ago, I've kept it to a minimum, simply because the skills that you were doing back then are irrelevant. Even if it was the same kind of job, the techniques, processes, technologies that you'll be utilising have changed. So you'll want to list it on there that you've done it because some of the experience will be relevant, but what you've done in the last 5 years, that's the key stuff that they're really going to be interested in. Next on your CV is going to be your education history. And in your education history section, you want to put your strongest qualification first, or the qualifications that are most relevant to the job that you're going for. If that happened to be a degree, that's the one you want proudly displayed at the top. That's the one that you probably want to put a little bit more detail about. Your strongest qualification, or whatever it is, needs to go there. If you just did GCSEs, that's nothing to be ashamed of, put them in. But if you've got E's and F's in there, I'd probably leave them aside. I'd just put your A to C's, they're the ones that people want to see. The last couple of bits on your CV are going to be your hobbies and interests section, and then your references section. Hobbies and interests themselves are often overlooked as to their importance within a CV. To be honest with you, they're not going to make the difference to you actually getting an interview in the first place, but they can be a good point of conversation or relevant points of conversation in an interview itself. With hobbies and interests themselves, you don't want to have loads and loads of content in there, but you want content that's going to make you sound both normal, straightforward, easygoing sort of character, but with a few interesting points that lead into what you're actually about. But some of those hobbies and interests can also be things relevant to the job that you're going for. For example, if you're going for a manager's job and you happen to be the captain of the local football team or the head boy when you was at school, then they can be good selling points. So I'd certainly put them in. But you've actually got things in CVs that can be pretty commonly found in a hobbies and interests section that can actually be detrimental to certain jobs that you're going for. For example, if you're going for a night shift manager's job and in your CV you list socialising and spending time with your family as key elements that are massively important to you, then if you're always going to be doing nights, asleep in the day, and that's going to be your commitment, they might think, well, this guy's not going to have his social time and he's not going to have his family time. Is he going to stay in the job? So just think about what you're writing. When it comes to references, you don't actually need to put any references in there. The only reason you would probably put references in there is if you had people that were really credible at what they did, who were going for a really senior level job. Let's say you were trying to get a doctor's job or something, you had 3 example professors or doctors or something on the subject you're going into that were willing to give you a reference on there and they were listed underneath, then great. But if you're just going for 95% of jobs, just put references available upon request. Now finally, once your CV is written, there are 2 things you want to do before starting to make applications.
The first is to get it proofread. I'd probably get someone else to proofread it just to look for spelling mistakes, whether it flows, whether it looks all right. If you have grammatical errors, there will be hiring managers out there that will look for that and say, well, if they can make a mistake on their CV, then they can make a mistake in the job. Now, most hiring managers have moved on from that, and I personally think that's a bit silly myself, but that is quite commonplace. The second thing you want to do is save your CV in either a Word or PDF format. They're the two formats that applicant tracking systems understand most. So with that pretty much sums this video up. Hopefully I've given you the information you need today to be able to write a CV that's good for 95% of the jobs that exist out there. If you do want to go for higher level jobs, stuff like that, you're looking for a corporate level professional grade job, and we can do another video on advanced CV tips. If you want to see something like that, put it in the comments below. If you have any questions, you want more information, again, put them in the comments below. If you do like the video, do give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon so you're not going to miss any one of our forthcoming videos.